Well, why are we here? Well, I'll give you a summation. It started with Occupy Wall Street with outrage about the corruption within our financial industry. Everybody knows about the $700 billion bailouts. Well, going beyond that, since those bailouts, there's been over or close to $9 trillion, that's with a T, loaned to the big banks from the Federal Reserve at 0.01% interest that gets loaned back to the government at 3% interest. That's so these big banks can steal close to $20 billion, more dollars from the taxpayers without having the word bailout to it and without even having to pay it back. These big banks have corrupted themselves to no end. They've perjured themselves before Congress. They forged foreclosure documents. They push collateralized debt obligations and credit default swaps on the public. Now, as a result of their actions, a family gets foreclosed on, forced out into the streets every 74 seconds in this country.
Are you serious?
Yes, it's really, really happening. But not one of the bankers have gone to jail. Oh yeah, they paid some fines, some penalties, a fraction of what they stole. Let's say you can go rob a bank. Okay, I just stole $10,000 from a bank. Here's $1,000. All good now? Wonderful. That's what's happening in our banks right now. Our politics, no better. About a month ago, I was reading in the newspaper, Congress has been benefiting from insider trading for years. Martha Stewart goes to jail, but if you happen to be in the lawmaking body of our government, well, you're above the law, so you can benefit from insider trading. That's trading. That's corruption on the highest levels.
For sure.
We have decisions by our Supreme Court. Our Supreme Court, which has become nothing more than a commodity itself for sale to the highest bidder, told us in 2010 with the case Citizens United versus the FEC that corporations are people. They've also told us that money is free speech and there's no longer a cap on campaign donations, the super PACs, basically money laundering. If you combine those three things, it simply says that America is up for sale to the highest bidder. You got enough money, you can buy your own politician. Multinational corporations have plenty of money. They can donate to both sides, Republicans and Democrats. So whoever gets elected, they have influence and control over, and that's who's going to be represented by our government, not the people of the United States. We are no longer in a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It's by the rich, for the rich. If you don't have money, you don't count in this country anymore. Well beyond the financial problems with this country, we have other problems too. These illegal wars for profit and resources. We don't go to war to spread democracy. We don't go to war to fight terror or for our national security. Those are lies that are sold to the American public to justify us going to war. But the simple fact of the matter is, war is a racket. War makes billions of dollars for companies like Halliburton and Lockheed Martin and ExxonMobil. And the prime example of that is our war with Iraq. Saddam Hussein, yes, he was an evil dictator, we all know that. But he was running a secular government in the Middle East. Al-Qaeda hated him as much as they hated the United States. There was absolutely no connection whatsoever to 9/11. Iraq posed no threat to the United States. And we got rid of his weapons of mass destruction after he gassed his own people in the early 90s. We went to war based on a complete lie. Why? To make money. Give you an idea, a company like Halliburton got in Iraq what's called tax plus deals. In other words, the incentive for them was to spend as much money as they possibly could on anything they could. Why? Because they got a tax plus deal. Whatever they spend, they get back in the form of taxpayer dollars plus. That's a tax plus deal. That's why they stayed in five-star lavish hotels, had the best meals. That's why they bought fleets of Humvees. Instead of changing the oil, when it came time, just burn the fleet, buy a new one. More importantly, that's why they would send empty convoys of trucks. Empty trucks, 500 miles back and forth through dangerous territory. Why? Simply because so they could spend the money on something, because they had to keep spending. The more they spend, the more they get. It's also why soldiers driving those empty trucks drove over IEDs and lost their lives, simply because Halliburton wanted to improve their quarterly profits. It's reprehensible. It's got to stop. Other issues facing us, privatization of all public services. When you privatize a public service, it's no longer about serving the public. It's about making money for a few people at the expense of the many. Yet we privatize our schools, our healthcare, our prisons, even our military. We are reintroducing slavery into the United States via the privatized prison system. The way they work now is like hotels. It doesn't mean the inmates get a chocolate on their pillow. That simply means these prisons aren't making money if those cells aren't full. So it's their incentive to keep those cells full. You want innocent people or non-violent offenders in those prisons, and you want to keep them in there longer, because the longer they're in there, the more money people make. Reintroducing slavery. Privatizing our military. Hate to keep going back to Halliburton. They got food contracts. Well, the way the military used to do it was you had a mess hall open 24 hours. Soldiers came as they were hungry or needed to eat. They came, they got their food, they dispersed. Well, that's not cost effective. Halliburton comes in, privatized, and they says, well, you know what? Breakfast is going to be from 7 to 9. Lunch is going to be from 12 to 2. And dinner's going to be from 7 to 9. And that's when you eat. And you don't take it to eat, because that's not cost effective. You eat it all right here in a group. It's more cost effective that way. Great. Now you got everybody knowing exactly when the troops are going to be there, when they're going to be there in the greatest number, and condensed like that. And that's when an IED can come in and take out, an RPG rather, can come out and take 24 of our soldiers out at a time. Again, so companies can save money. What else? Our environment, that's the biggest issue for me, because all the money in the world won't matter if we're living on a dead planet. Currently, we're at 390 parts per million of CO2 in our atmosphere, and rising rapidly. By all accounts, we will be at 450 parts per million sometime between 2040 and 2050, at which point all ice on the planet will melt. That's not some BS statistic, that's not some liberal bias, that is a scientific fact agreed upon by every scientific agency in the world.
What was the temperature again?
It's parts per million of CO2. Once it reaches 450, at that point there'll be so much CO2 up there that stays up there for 100 years. The greenhouse effect will result in all ice melting on the planet, all glaciers, both the poles. And again, that's a scientific fact. It's agreed upon by every scientific agency out there. But again, through a campaign of doubt and denial, they don't want you to believe that. And they're telling us, oh, converting to green energy, it's going to be too expensive. Oh, it's going to cost jobs. Wrong. JFK said way back when, we're going to put a man on the moon, and we're going to do it in a decade. That was before we even had the technology. We had to develop the technology to do it. But we did it. Today, all the technology exists. Between wind power, solar power, geothermal, and tidal power, which is fantastic, we have all the technology we need to make a complete conversion to green energy and stop releasing all this CO2 in the atmosphere. But we refuse to do it because of lack of political will and a campaign of doubt that a lot of the population buys, spurred on by the likes of Coke Industries and ExxonMobil, and other fossil fuel industries. Why? Because they make a ton of money on fossil fuels. Converting to green energy ain't going to put money in their pockets, so why do it? I don't know, to save the planet? Instead, what do? Mountaintop removal of coal. There are over 500 mountaintops decapitated along Appalachia for coal. Coal companies come in with the promise of jobs in impoverished areas. People need jobs, they take them. Well, 3 years later, the foundations on their houses are cracked because of the explosions. Their mountaintops been decimated. They've been breathing in coal dust. Their aquifers are poisoned and their kids have cancer. A lot worse off when the coal companies first got there. The tar sands. It takes more energy to extract fuel from the tar sands than it provides. Simple answer, don't do it. But it's subsidized, so people like the Koch brothers, they make a lot of money on it and they push for it. And they get it. Why? Because they have money and they have influence over our government.
Do you know what the arguments are for the tar sands? Because like I've heard people say that like, no, it's actually really good fuel, and I mean like I'm against them obviously, but I mean I've heard people argue for them and saying like it's not as bad. Is 4 to 1?
Oh my God,
is it 4 to 1? Like
the
water
tar sands
to oil?
Are a powder keg. I mean, they are releasing so much CO2 in the atmosphere. It's disgusting and destroying so much land.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, it takes more energy to extract that fuel than it provides. It's a simple equation. But again, when it's subsidized, and people like the Koch brothers can make money on it, they're going to push it. Besides that, we're also coming up on the two-year anniversary of the BP oil disaster. The ecosystem forever tens of thousands of people still sick with claims against BP that have not received a penny from them yet. But what do? They go on a multi-million-dollar ad campaign to improve their corporate image. I guess a few days ago they did settle for a small amount, and they'll still leak out a little bit of money here and there to pay for their crimes, but the Gulf will never be the same. The fishing industry in the Gulf will never recover. Shrimp captains are catching only 20% of the shrimp they're used to. There are tens of thousands of people still sick there, and the ecosystem is forever decimated. They're talking about the extinction of sperm whales because of what BP has done. Coral reefs are dying down there. I mean, they can directly link the BP oil disaster to what's happening down there right now. The fish are getting lesions and fin rot. I mean, it's just absolutely disgusting what's happening. But today, 2 years after the BP oil disaster, there is now more drilling in the Gulf than ever. I mean, don't we ever learn? Apparently not. Fracking, there's another one, pumping millions and millions of pounds of chemicals and poisons into the ground and pretending that it's not going to have a negative effect. Come on, people are lighting their tap water on fire now. You're going to be poisoning more aquifers, more sources of water. And which is sad. Again, we can convert to green energy, but we got to break through the lies. We got to break through this campaign of doubt and denial to do it. We are America. We are great. Let's be great again. Let's lead the country. Let's lead the world.
Yeah. Thank you, man.